Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other. And we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
How can Superman and Batman be reimagined for modern audiences and longtime fans? This is Systematic Geekology. We are the priest to the geeks. And I am one of your hosts, Kevin Schaeffer. And joining me today to talk all things Batman and Superman, and particularly the latest incarnations in the animated universe, Christian, Ashley, Will, Rose. Guys, how are you?
Fantastic. No, I'm feeling geektastic, friends. Geektastic. Yeah.
I am doing well as well. I'm a little tired from being on the road all day long, but I got to see Nick Polk today.
What?
And that just raised my spirits.
To geek out with one of our former hosts and friends, and sometimes on the episode, Nick Polk. What is he up to? What is he geek out? We could do a whole episode of where in the world is Nick Polk? This could be our episode, but thankfully we're not going to spend the whole time doing that.
Yes.
Where is Nick Polk these days?
Oh, I love it. And as Will just said before we started recording, he's missing the Olympics and surfing to record this episode, which is a big sacrifice for him. So we know how he's basically the Silver Surfer in the real world. So, this is great. But we get to talk Batman and Superman. So, it's a win-win. So
it's a good trade.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a good trade. Yeah. I'm a major sacrifice. I just showed, if the waves were good and I had an opportunity to go surfing right now, really good waves, or record this episode, I'm sorry, guys, I would choose the waves over you. But I can always catch replay of the gold medal heats and matches in surfing. I've been geeking out so hard on the Olympics and having so much fun with it. And I love that surfing's in it. And they're wrapping it up tonight, and I'll catch it later on. But I'm here with you because I could not be, what's the double negative? I could not be on this episode because, man, Kevin floated out there in our chat and was like, hey, do you guys want to talk about this? I was like, yes, I love these cartoons. I love these shows. I love what they're doing. It's a good time to be a geek. So yeah, I'm here. Loving it.
I am stoked for this one. And before we get to the main topic, what are you guys geeking out on?
Yeah, I just shared mine. It's the Olympics.
Yeah,
I am the dude. I mean, I'm not afraid to cry, but I don't think I'm like a big time crier. But during the Olympics, I'm like crying during the commercials of some kids trying to get to their dreams, and they pull my heartstrings. And even those that don't win gold, that chase their dreams to be in the Olympics and train their whole life. I just love it so much. And I was a year-round swimmer when I was a kid, and so I love the swimming. And now that surfing's in it, and man, I even got into the 100-meter dash last night. Yeah, I'm geeking out hard on the Olympics.
Right on.
Yeah. I happened to acquire a CD that I used to listen to all the time back in the day, and I gifted that temporarily to Nick so that he could bring it to Theology Beer Camp and get Kevin Max to sign my Jesus Freak CD for me. I am very excited about that. He was very gracious enough to agree to do that for me.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome. Speaking of signatures, so I went to GalaxyCon in Raleigh last weekend. Got multiple autographs and photo ops. The biggest ones on the comics world, I got to meet John Romita Jr., and he signed my copy of Daredevil, Man Without Fear. And then on the celebrity end, so I met Ron Perlman, John Bernthal and Deborah Ann Wool, Sam Raimi, which was amazing, Brandon Routh, and Dante Basco, and other members of the Avatar Last Airbender cast. And Will Wheaton. So I think I got through all. Yeah, I met a lot. It was a great show. It is. This is one of the
cred. That is some big geek cred.
Yeah.
Very great con, but yeah. So all good things we're geeking out on, but tonight we're talking two of the latest projects in the DC animated universe. So, and oddly enough, both shows were announced around the same time a few years ago. I remember My Adventures of Superman came out 2 years ago, and then Batman Caped Crusader finally came out. But I remember when they were both announced several years ago, and it was right around the same time, and it was really cool to see. But yeah, so we were talking My Adventures of Superman and Batman Caped Crusader. My Adventures of Superman has 2 seasons out so far, and then Batman on Max, the HBO service, and then Batman Caped Crusader just released its first season on Amazon Prime. So there's a lot. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Quick question. If you guys know, like, why is Batman Caped Crusader on Amazon Prime and not Max? Warner Brothers.
Because
more of Zaslav being Zaslav.
Yes, that's I'm gonna try not to trash like an individual, but also he deserves criticism. But yes, no, that was Zaslav cut it off among many shows and movies that were either canceled or removed entirely from the HBO Max library in the past year or so. Yes, he can't. Like, it was originally set to debut on Max, and then he canceled it. Amazon quickly snatched it up. So because
they did.
Yeah. A great boon for them.
Yep.
And Mr. Zaslav, you can direct all your complaints to Joshua Knoll at AskJeeves.com.
Exactly. Yep. It's entirely his. He told us to say that. So yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
But it is
here.
No, it is. I mean, it is a like glaring thing there to have like every other DC property on Max, and then this is on Amazon. But yeah, but that is it. It was a Zaslav thing. But yeah, but so these are both, just like, I mean, I think we have a lot of positive things to say about both shows, and I'm really excited to talk about them. So to kind of tackle this, we're gonna like look at each series and also kind of our backgrounds with these characters and with the DC animated universe as a whole. So let's start with that. So talking about My Adventures of Superman. So first, what is each of your backgrounds with DC animation, the entire universe? Any properties there you really like? Christian, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, I started super young, ever since 92, when I was 2 years old and Batman the Animated Series came out. I watched it with my dad ever since. Same thing, Superman the Animated Series. And of course, when the reruns of the Super Friends, Challenge of the Super Friends, and everything else would show up on Cartoon Network back in the day, I was there watching it.
Oh, man. The glory days.
Christian just made me feel super old when he was like 92 when I was 2. And I was like, yeah, my first year in college. Yeah, there you go, Christian. At UNCW, where you went to.
Yeah.
For me, like, of course, as a kid, I was a huge cartoon fan, Hanna-Barbera, Super Friends. I loved Marvel Comics. I love Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I would grab mostly Marvel Comics, X-Men comics, but I would grab the occasional Superman or Batman comic because I love Super Friends and I just loved those heroes. I loved any kind of superhero. So I kind of Superman, Batman adjacent fans. X-Men, Star Wars were my thing, but of course I couldn't help but the zeitgeist and the gravitational pull of the original heroes that started it all, Superman and Batman, I loved. And then when I stopped collecting, kind of when I got into high school, I kind of dropped off collecting, but I was still a geek at heart. And I remember being in college and catching Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series and just going like, man, this is so good. It was appointment television. I was like, yep, I'm not collecting or reading the comics. It was comics on TV. So I was watching those shows. And so any kind of that animated stuff, and of course the Marvel animated stuff on Saturday mornings was a lot of fun on Fox, of course, Spider-Man and X-Men. But the Superman animated series, Batman animated series, you just couldn't beat it. That was in college. I would watch it all the time and loved it. And then when I got back into comics, I would go back and look at kind of classic stories of Superman and Batman, and then what I missed in that gap of me collecting. And then here comes the 2000s animation of the Justice League Unlimited, and the kind of revival of that stuff was jumped right in.
And yeah, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited were huge for me. Obviously, Batman the Animated Series, but like because I was sorry, Will, to make you feel a little older, but I was born in '93, so 1 year after the animated series premiered. But grew up on that. Grew up on Batman Beyond. But Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, I think, like especially, really were so formative to me. Like just to see all of them together and portrayed so well in so many stories that were iconic. And I mean, that was just a staple of my childhood. And it's so fun to revisit as an adult because it's not just nostalgia, but like the quality of the storytelling holds up so well all these years later. And it's cool. Like, Will, you got to experience that whole zeitgeist like when you were in college, and it's a fun parallel because like for me, the Arrowverse started when I was in college, and that was a big part of my, and so it's a cool like. But it's just one of the best interconnected universes, and Batman the Animated Series is what started it all. But getting into Superman, Superman the Animated Series was huge as well, and it just also gave such a definitive version of Clark Kent, of Lex, of Lois, and started with his origin, and then focused on his early days in Metropolis and working at Daily Planet. Had all the classic tenets, and it paved the way too for the eventual team up. And I also, one of my favorites as a kid was the Batman Superman movie. Anytime that people say like BVS is the big, I'm like, no, you did not grow up on it was the VHS of just titled the Batman Superman movie. That is still like one of the best Batman Superman team ups ever.
Is that out there streamed somewhere? Is that Batman? Is that like the combo of the Batman Superman animated series team up? Is that what that is?
Yes, and it's one of the only ones where like it's harder to find, unfortunately. You can probably get it on both, but I don't. To my last time I looked, I don't think it is streaming, which is unfortunate. But it was great. It had the two of them, and it had Lex and Joker. It's just a great time.
Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it called Superman and Batman or Batman and Superman?
That's a good question.
Because it's probably on YouTube somewhere. So that's where I'm going to search.
I think I would type in. I think it's the Batman Superman movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Batman,
movie. Batman dash Superman, like, and not versus or anything. But yeah,
it's probably on YouTube somewhere. I will say, what does actually kind of help me a little bit tonight, knowing that both of you were born in the 1900s with me, also makes me feel
we're still in the same century.
We're in the same century, but I can't say that about TJ and other people who may be hosts on Geekology. But the fact that we're all born in the 1900s is great, and that at different times of our lives, which shows the longevity of how these animated series. They're not just cartoons for like little tiny kids. Like they have enduring. Endurance. They have endurance and longevity because they tell just a good story and get to the heart of what these characters are all about and what Superman is all about, what Batman's all about, and we'll talk later why they endure so much. But yeah, I think it's just a testimony to how they just hold up over time.
Absolutely, and that's a great segue there to talking about Superman and specifically this series. But so we obviously mentioned Superman the animated series. What are some of your other favorite Superman stories, either in comics, film and TV, animation? Christian, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obvious answer would be something like For the Man Who Has Everything, both in comic form and in the Justice League episode. Were done really well. I'd also go with What's So Funny About What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, which introduces the elite to Manchester Black and everything. And guys like, why is Superman Superman? Why do we not believe in a dark age of comics anymore? Because you don't want Superman to be that way. But I have on YouTube here the image of the War World Saga, which is one of the most recent stories I got into, which is actually how I got back into reading DC, was reading Action Comics and seeing him take people like the Authority, who I really don't care for, and actually making them good characters and having a little bit of optimism thrown in. There was Superman fighting as a slave in War World to try and free slaves. It was amazing.
Is that Philip K. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Ryan Doe's friend of the show did a great interview with him on Across the Bifrost, and kind of did he was interviewing some creative teams there for us. What's Your Issue was like kind of a a small limited series he did on the podcast, and he talked about Philip K. Johnson. Had a great interview, and they talked about that series. I've been meaning to read that one because I heard about it, and then heard the interview with Philip K. Johnson, and wanted to get into it. So yeah, a good pick, good pull there, Christian.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Will, what about you? Some of your favorite Superman stories?
Yeah, I'm also like a kid since I go way back. I'm one of the elder statesmen of this of this podcast. It's like I remember seeing the Superman movie in the theater and Superman 2 in the theater, and I was a young kid at that time, but I do remember Superman 2 coming on HBO a lot when I was a kid, and that movie with him fighting other Kryptonians and supervillains that had the same powers as him. We really got to see him. Superman 1, it was an origin story. He was trying to outwit Lex Luthor, and he got to show his superpowers. But man, when you go up against Kryptonians who are the same like power strength as you, and you can just go all out and hit the hardest and laser beam the hardest, that was and we saw that. We're going to see that in My Adventure Superman 2, like how he can like not hold back. But that movie, man, Superman 2, it's just so good. I need to go back and watch it again. It's been a while, but that made a big impact to me as a kid. Christopher Reeves, but also battling other Kryptonians. It's just really rad.
Oh, yes. I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast before, and I did a panel with Robert Venditti at NC Comic Con last year, the writer of the Superman 78 comic. So anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of those films. And, and I did get to see the original at the Alamo Drafthouse last year, like in early 2023. And it is just if you get the chance to see Superman 78 or Superman 2 or both on the big screen at any point, highly recommend. Superman Returns was the first Superman movie I got to see in theaters when I was a kid. Because I was in middle school when that came out. And having just met Brandon Routh, I can say he was like such a nice guy, was like born to play Superman. But some of my favorites in the comics are Superman for All Seasons. I love the Tomasi and Gleason run from the Rebirth era. For an alternate take, I love Red Sun. There are a lot of great stories out there. And yeah, there are many. And we'll talk in a bit about, what makes Superman still iconic and still relevant all these years. Because, of course, there are naysayers, and I love to counteract those people. You're, of course, entitled to your opinions, but I will argue until the end of time that, Superman is one of the great superheroes for a reason. But I
think Superman, like you said, Superman 78, that comic is pretty good too. If you like those movies,
yes.
Robert Venditti, classic author who's friends of the North Carolina Comic Con crew, he wrote a good one there. That's a pretty good comic run.
Absolutely, definitely check that out. Yeah, awesome. Well, so now let us segue into My Adventures of Superman. So this is an animated series that premiered in 2022 and then just wrapped up its second season a few weeks ago. And this series takes Clark, Lois, and Jimmy to early college age. Around there, they are interns at the Daily Planet in season 1. And Clark is figuring out who he is, his Kryptonian heritage, and becoming Superman as he's transitioning to Metropolis. And what I really love about this series is the way that it captures all the classic tenets of the character and of Lois and Jimmy, and still manages to put it in a modern setting, and does reinventions, reimaginings of the characters and different storylines. And particularly, I was talking about Last Airbender earlier, and how that series is not an anime, but clearly anime influenced. This also has a huge anime influence, to the point where there's a My Adventures of Superman comic out right now, and the first issue, there's a panel that is like direct homage to Dragon Ball Z. And so I love that, the influences are there. And it's a really cool fusion of these styles, that something we really haven't seen before with Superman. So I really appreciate about that. But for you guys, so that's a little bit of context about the show. But yeah, I mentioned, what are some of the classic tenets of the character that it portrays, and also some of the other elements that the show reimagines?
Yeah, I mean, we've got Superman in Metropolis while posing as a human, but also, being a superhero, trying to fight for the good of other people because of being raised by such good parents like Ma and Pa Kent, and working with, with a sleuth like Lois Lane in a younger situation, but still doing her thing, and Jimmy Olsen doing his thing and modernizing it to the point where he's on the internet and now he's focusing on conspiracy theories and stuff like that, and how they all three are trying to break their way into the newspaper business that's kind of a dying medium, but it's still part of the mythos. So you got to keep the Daily Planet there at some point in time. And we encounter villains all across of all different stripes. Some of them encountered, way earlier than you would expect in other adaptations. But yeah, it just is a fun way of having him be that big blue Boy Scout we all know and love, and be a bit goofy, but also have some harder moments.
I love it. So this is basically Superman year one, right? So this is him first, his entry level. He's learning how to be a hero. The first episode is him crushing his alarm clock and pulling handles off doors because he doesn't know how to control his strength because he's so nervous about his first day at the Daily Planet. And what I love about these characters, they're so charming. They're so likable. They're not super I don't even know how to describe it. I don't want to stereotype any kind of one generation or anything, but I because I'm a part of one too that can also be criticized. But they are so charming and likable and hopeful, and they are self-aware, and their nervousness and anxiety of wanting to be the best that they can be at what they do. And then the charm comes when they learn to be friends with each other. So you have Clark, Lois, and Jimmy, all three of them learning in real time how to be friends and how to just make it in this world. And the animation's great. It's not hardcore computer CGI stuff. It is 2D anime-esque, The Last Airbender kind of animation that I just adore. So the animation's fantastic, and just how they're characterized. And it's just so likable. I like them so much. You root for them, you pull for them, and they're just charming. So that's what I take away from it. And what Superman, my vision of Superman is in the real context world. There's tech, and there's cell phones, and there's internet, and there's people. They're live streaming what they're up to. Jimmy's live streaming instead of him being a photographer for the Daily Planet with a click, camera where you take it to get the film developed. He's live streaming on his social media and gaining money and popularity from that. So it's very modern. We'll get to it later, but the Cape Crusader is set in the 40s. So you have landline phones and Tommy guns and old classic cars. So the juxtapose between these two of modern tech and then the throwback to the 1940s. But in the midst of it is the characters that make the show. And so these charming characters that you're rooting for, that you hope they get together and that their friendship blossoms, and that he learns how to be a hero, is all there. Even though they've modernized it with the tech and the people and the races and the genders or whatever you want to talk about, it's still the heart of who they are as characters, and get the heart of who they are. And we'll talk about that in a minute, what makes them who they are to begin with. But I couldn't love it more, as you could tell by what I've just been gushing over.
Well, and I think you said it perfectly too, in terms of the charm and the joy that this show is infused with, because I think, we'll get into this a little bit more about, again, what makes Superman still relevant. But I think there is a tendency when creators are trying to update him for modern audiences, they think they need to go the angsty dark route. And not to say that there can be dark, serious Superman stories. I mean, all of them are serious, but not to say you can't have a little darkness, a little angst. But when you have it, that be a defining element, I think you're missing a core tenet of who Superman is, because yes, he's going to struggle. Yes, he's going to be sad. Yes, he's going to be tempted and going to, but I mean, he's still, that's the human side of him. But at the core of who he is like you said, Christian, he's raised by Ma and Pa Kent. He's infused with these values that push him to see the hope in humanity and compels him to want to save others and be a force for good. And beyond that, again, this show in particular puts a huge emphasis on Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen and the dynamic there. So what about Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, their stories, who they are quintessential to Superman's story?
Christian, I mean, they been there pretty much since the very beginning. And you had the whole ordeal in comics where you could never progress a couple until they got married in the 90s. And they, unlike a certain other company, they stayed together as a couple because that's a natural progression for their characters. And they look after one another, they love each other, but they fight because they're people. But they both have lives outside of each other. They seek each other. But then when it comes to Jimmy too, you know, Jimmy Olsen, Superman's best pal, who across the years has gone through many different changes, sometimes quite literal whenever they needed to sell a new cover. And oh no, Jimmy's turned into a giant turtle or what have you. But and oh no, Jimmy's going to meet Darkseid this time. Fun fact: he still appears the first time there. But it gets essence of both of them are shown in that Jimmy is someone who's going to rush after the story to get the best picture, or to live stream in this case, because hey, that's a great way to modernize it. It's a great to reimagine him. If you're going to reimagine him, do it that way. Lois is still that plucky girl who's going to get herself in trouble because she's got to get the scoop. And she also knows later on, growing up through this series, that Clark is there. She doesn't use him as a safety net, but she also knows he can help her if something goes wrong. So I like to see how they explore them, and the whole race lifting thing. But this is a reimagining. If this was like we're trying to remake something, the original comics, I'd be a little angry. But this is a new universe. This is their own spin on that thing. So I don't particularly get uppity about that.
Yeah, I think representation is pretty important. And when they were all written, it wasn't like predominantly black characters in these comics because of just who was writing them, what was going on at the time. So to have Superman's friend be a person of color, and also in the midst of that, I think it helps. Representation is important there. The friendship, I think Lois and Jimmy help ground Superman. Yes, he has power beyond anyone can imagine. He can fly above the clouds. He can go super fast. But what they do is they help ground him, and you look through their eyes of their friendship. And so, yeah, he can save a cat from a tree. Yeah, he can stop a car from speeding off, and he can save lots of people, and he can save the world, and he can stand against Amanda Waller's army. But it's really his friends that he has a heart with. And that's also not just his kryptonite that is his weakness, but also, man, villains that can tap into his love for his friends and family and those he cares about. That's his real weakness. That's how you get at him. You go after his friends, and you see some of that in season 2. But I think both of them ground them, and how the animation's done. You see on their face, the fact there are times when Lois Lane she literally blushes, and Superman Clark literally blush at each other and other things. I'm like, it's so good. It's like we should get we should get Elizabeth. We should get Pang to watch this.
Yeah, I think
story. I think she would like it. I wonder what. But yeah, Kevin, how about you? What is about Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen that they endure, but also they're inseparable? I think with Superman's story, they're inseparable. Inseparable,
and I think here especially they're all in this coming of age. So because I really like that aspect of the choosing to put them at college intern age. I think was a great choice because when you use the phrase coming of age, it's typically associated with middle and high school. But I think having gone through college years and 20s, I think your 20s are your second coming of age, and that's where you're really finding out who you are, and you're discovering who you want to align yourself with and what you want to do. And I think it portray and Clark, Lois, and Jimmy are so intrinsic to each other that they help each other grow. And I love that here Clark and Jimmy start out as roommates, and then they meet Lois on their first day on the job. It's just such a great dynamic. And Clark of course has the anxiety of revealing his powers and who he really is to anyone, but even especially I think to the people he trusts the most, because he doesn't want to get them hurt. But it's a great moment when or a really great storyline when Lois discovers who he is, and and instead of being panicked, I think they realize they can help each other, and they can believe in one another. And I just love that dynamic so well. I also love Perry White's portrayal here, because he's the classic gruff, editor-in-chief for the Daily Planet, but even more so here because, again, they're all interns, and these are like, especially with Lois being the most, ambitious, wants to go after the story. And he's just like, oh, these college kids, because it's one thing like in the, classic superhero stories where she's his, top reporter and all that. But here they're just like, there to get coffee and stuff. And I love how they prove themselves and are able to climb the ladder. And then they, get more to do in that respect in season 2. So yeah, they're just, they're so fundamental to Clark bringing to his journey to becoming Superman. And I just really love the age and the dynamics here in this show. And I'll say too, to the representation, just, because like with this and Kid Crusader, I've seen the criticism there, and I'm not going to put down anyone's opinions. Anyone is welcome to have it. But I think, when you look at, like, oh, why do they have to change these things? It's like when these stories first came out in the late 1930s and 40s, yes, all the characters were predominantly white. That's all that was like acceptable at the time and all that. If we're making stories that are to reflect the world as it is today, you should absolutely have representation, and you should do it to make everyone feel seen and heard. And, what better character than Superman to represent that, And so I think it's, it's done really well here. And it's just, this is just a world that is so wonderfully inclusive. And, I love that the representation is there. So that's all I just wanted to say to that. But yeah, so but those are great points there about the whole trio. And then so season 1 does a lot with the three of them, and again, like, Clark, revealing himself as Superman to the world, and then having to save Metropolis at the end. And there's also stuff with like Sam Lane, and there are teases of the larger DC universe. But season 2 really explores the wider DC universe in more detail, bringing in characters from both like Superman comics and villains, but also several others throughout. So what are some ways that it introduces some of the other characters throughout DC Comics, and who are some of your favorites too?
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah. I was just like season 1. I think there's an element of like they say in the first episode, he asks like, "Who am I?" after like he's flying doing that stuff, and then it unfolds in season 1, even wrestling with like not even understanding this hologram of his dad and Kryptonian tech, and there's some hints at like, alien invasion. Yeah, Amanda Waller, and he feels self-conscious about being an alien. Is he a human? Is he an alien? Is an Earthling? Is this fear of the other, the fear of the metahuman. They kind of do that a little bit towards the end, and you have Lois and her dad, and then Clark and his dad, and then I think that's nice way they handle that, where they handle their family and who they are and who they want to be apart from their family, and then what shaped them. Season 2, you're dealing more also again with this Amanda Waller, the threat of Kryptonians, and then you introduce Kara, right? Kara-El, and she Supergirl, his cousin. So he's not alone. He's not the last Kryptonian. There's another person like him, and she's trying to figure out. And she's almost possessed by and brainwashed by Brainiac, which is one of the Superman's top villains, rogues gallery, but we haven't seen in a motion picture yet until I guess what's next. I don't know if James Gunn's doing that one. Is that the main villain in James Gunn?
Not in the first one that I know, but like it's got to happen eventually.
Come on.
Yeah.
We've seen them all except Brainiac, and man, I can't wait for that. So Brainiac's the main villain, but then you have Kara. Am I saying that right? Kara? What? I'm always.
They say Kara.
Yeah,
I've always said Kara until like the live action Supergirl show.
I'm about to say they always say Kara there, so I've just like I think I've heard it more. There are those characters where like depending on the creator or they might pronounce it, but Kara seems to be the predominant, and that's what I go with.
And there you see the tension between family, where I was born, my blood, but then also who raised me, the nature nurture kind of aspect of who I am and identity, and friends, and where do you belong, and what makes you, who are you, and her doubting him of who he really is, whether he's strong or not. And I just love, there's a lot of stuff in this season, whether it's just the tension between Lois and Clark and their relationship, and the romance, but also the supervillain, and also their parents, and Amanda Waller wanting to stop the threat. I mean, man, Amanda Waller's all over the place these days. We just talked about her in Suicide Squad. She's absolute power event in DC. She's coming up again in other aspects, but this one, she's kind of the main antagonist, and she's got a point. Yeah, if there's aliens coming, you got to protect the Earth. I mean, with that much power, of course you're going to be scared. You got to close the borders if that's coming. If that's really the case, you got to do something about that. But this whole understanding of kind of current age of borders, the foreigner, the refugee, the other comes into play, because that's ultimately what's going on here with Superman. We talked about it before. He's not necessarily, I think, as much as a Christ figure as I see him as a Moses figure, as someone who is a deliverer from, put in a basket and thrown to another universe and sent to save, and that power set. So anyway, I just loved how the season set that up, and then Kara, gosh, messed it up. I feel self-conscious about that. Talk about being self-conscious. And her aspect, knowing that she's going to have a movie of her own pretty soon by the DC universe and James Gunn. I can't wait for that. But I loved that tension between those two, family, cousins, same power set, who you're protecting, where do you belong? Those questions are man, there's a reason those questions have been around a long time and aren't going anywhere.
Absolutely. I really liked how Supergirl was handled here, being this more threat for most of the season, really. And it's not until the end when they set her on the path of becoming Supergirl. But yeah, it goes back to what I said earlier about, and what I said about, key to who Superman is his upbringing. If he had not been raised by mom and pop, Kent, would have been totally different. Like I mentioned Red Sun earlier, and that explores what would happen if Clark was raised in the Soviet Union instead of in Smallville. And I know that again goes into the whole nature and nurture debate, but it is his upbringing is a huge part of who he is. And with Supergirl, being under Brainiac's influence and having all the being manipulated and everything, she's going down this more alien invader threat path, and then once she meets Clark. And I also love the flirtations between her and Jimmy. I'm interested in seeing where that goes, and that was a really highlight of season 2 for me as well. But I thought that her arc was handled really well here, and I cannot wait to see where that goes too.
Consider subscribing on YouTube, where you can get some other stuff. You get exclusive series like our comic book catch-up, Manga Mustard, Drinks with Tejas, and a companion series we do each year to go with our annual theme. You also get access to Friday Night Frights and Wednesday Night Weeaboo and Spidey Swingbys with Christian Ashley. You get access to other exclusive shorts, like what I'm going to be doing soon are non-canon, where I'm going to be reviewing different IPs that are outside of canon from our favorite fandoms or the Bible and discussing whether or not it should be canon. You also can get a short of Will's Wednesday pull list. So if you're into comic books, Will goes through his favorites of each week's pull list for himself. You also get other bonuses over there. Most of our surprise content we'll put straight to YouTube, going live over there, that you can check out. And a lot of our regular episodes are also posted on YouTube if you just want to see our smiling faces.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how they had her in this series as like a foil to Clark. The nature versus nurture debate was a huge part of this, of her growing under the influence of Brainiac, who is this absolute monster in every continuity he's ever been in, unless he's Brainiac 5. But that's a separate issue. And it's yes. And it's just a beautiful thing to see Clark feel like, oh, I'm not alone. And even though I have my friends, I have humanity here, but I know I'm not human. I know I'm something else. Is there anyone else out there? And we get that here. And obviously, for those of you who know Superman, that there's not that many Kryptonians left until, continuity keeps going on, and eventually we find more and we find more again. And then a crisis happens, and now it's just Superman, and then it'll be Supergirl. And it's comics. It's cyclical. It is what it is. But for here, that moment of I'm not alone, but the only other me out there, a person like me, is fighting me. and also his family. So what am I supposed to do with that? Wrestling with that, and the fight with Brainiac, and Brainiac using the Black Mercy to have that moment to mess with Superman's mind as well and get him under his thrall was really great. I love the way to use Brainiac here, and I especially loved how they got rid of him for good. I mean, what better thing to get rid of your villain than to just throw him in the sun? And I will say as well, yeah, we also got introduced to my boy Steel, Shaquille O'Neal himself in the series. And I really enjoyed his episode. And of course, we finally learn as well who Lex Luthor actually is. It is that guy, Alex, from the first season. So technically he appeared there first, but now we know for sure it's him. And he has a huge grudge against Superman.
Here's year one too. Like if they're just like college interns and late teens, early 20 somethings, then so is Lex. And I love that aspect too. He's still learning how to be, and there's that jealousy or fear of the other, or I need the attention, or why is Superman better than me? I feel like I'm better than Superman. It's the roots are all there. And it's prevalent in our discussion today of like tech, and whether we run tech or tech runs us. And then the whole AI debate, like Brainiac is super relevant in terms of like the extinction of a species. I think let's learn from Krypton, not just like environmentalism and like making sure we pay attention to our scientists about what to do about those things, but also like present day, like AI and tech, and whether it runs us or we run it, or the threat, like, or whether it grows consciousness. It's like a Terminator movie. It could be, but Brainiac handled different way of this like sentient AI tech robot. Man, you can do so much with him. I love it that he never gets old.
And I don't know what it is, but like you can make comparisons to him being kind of like a Zuckerberg type character, like he was in BVS, but like for some, I just thought it was handled better here. Like that, again, like better. you said, like the year one aspect, it's like I like that he still has like all the ambitions and all of the tenets of Lex, but he's also still learning. He's not, the mastermind quite yet. And I like the tension building between him and Waller. I'm really interested in seeing how that goes.
And then Waller pushing him or like degrading him and like yelling at him, you're turning him into a villain against you without like, how do you handle your friends and your coworkers? Are you going to turn them into a hero, or are you going to turn them into a villain, a nemesis? Like, let's pay attention to how we treat other people, because man, that's gonna hold up a big mirror in Batman in itself. But like, are you gonna become a hero or a villain? But you can kind of tell what people are wrestling with, and how you treat the other, which direction they're gonna take.
Well, that's Waller to a T, is that she rules by fear, and that fear causes her to lash out, and it sometimes creates her own villains.
Man, boy, that speaks to our current age too, Christian, right? Fear.
Can't imagine
a politician going after folks. And go ahead. I digress.
Yeah.
No, it's very well. I mean, it speaks to the relevancy of the character. Actually, I mean, that leads into my next question. Also, just quick, I wanted to highlight some of the other so the Steel episode was great. They also, I mentioned Sam Lane in season 1. He continues in season 2. They also introduced Deathstroke in season 1, and a really interesting version too, because he's younger too, and also feels more kind of like a puppet for Amanda Waller. So I'm
big on his design.
It's an interesting design. I agree. Like I knew they wanted to do something different, but it also feels very anime. So I think it fits in with like the aesthetic of the show. But
and we had an episode called Olsen's 11, y'all. Olsen's 11.
Yes.
There's. It's so good.
I just I cannot imagine how much fun they have in the writers' room. Yeah. But yeah. Well, since you mentioned it, we touched on it earlier too. But because like it's very easy to relate real world issues to Superman, and that's why again, all the people say like, "Oh, Superman's not relevant." I disagree, but let's talk about that though. So after more than 80 years since his Action Comics debut in 1938, what makes Superman relevant in your eyes?
Well, I think it's a classic. I mean, it's definitely Joseph Campbell mythology, hero's journey archetype that I think endures, and there's a reason that endures in mythology and story, because it's embedded and baked into our human story of our longing for a savior, our longing for salvation, our longing for something more, and that's why our Christian faith is important to us, because we put our faith in someone who we think embodies that in like real life, not just in cartoons or comic books, in the person of Christ. But I think this kind of understanding of Superman being able to relate to the Moses figure and the Christ figure, and this understanding of alien, what it means to be human, and then what it means to be a hero. The ideal, not only just like a kid looking up to, oh, I wish I could fly, I wish I could shoot lasers out of my eyes, but then who is my neighbor? How do I save those around me? How do I take care of those around me? What is the external threat that I can save people from? I think those themes are human condition. They're part of the human condition and who we are and what we wrestle with daily, no matter where we are, no matter how advanced we get in our tech and our science or understanding of the universe, we're still going to wrestle with the basic human condition of our fallen nature, but also our desire to be good and Satan's center and all those things. So that's why it endures. If you write it well, people people write them in different ways and kind of how they're trying to work out their own junk, and that's fine. Mark Millar will write way, and Edward Berger will write his way, J.J. Abrams will write his way, and we'll do our way. But I think there's a reason why he is such an enduring figure, because it taps into what it means to be human, or what we long to be in terms of human and society. That's overarching.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. I mean, he's hope. He is the definition of hope. And much the way Steve Rogers is the hope of Marvel, Superman, Clark Kent is the hope of DC. He is the one you look up to. How do I judge myself by my actions? Well, what would Superman do in this situation? He would inspire hope. He would make people reach out to those who need help, whether it be people with suicidal thoughts, as we see in the All-Star Superman, or whether it be to even his own villain. How many times has he reached a hand out to Luthor, knowing Luthor is going to be that scorpion that's going to sting him on the back, but he's going to reach it out anyways for his sake, because he wants him to be better. He knows Lex can be better. And as well, he's the ultimate American. We are a country of immigrants, born of immigrants. He is the ultimate immigrant and the ultimate American at that point. I mean, not to get too political here, he didn't come in here illegally. Granted, it's a bit different than our real life situation, but he has proven himself to be what makes America America. What was it we discovered in the religions episode, Will? He was raised Methodist.
Yeah. Methodist household.
Yeah, he is your typical corn-fed Midwestern American boy that wants to be better, wants to do more for this world, was raised under these conditions with Mom and Pa Kent, and of course with religion as well, being like, hey, who is my neighbor? How do I love other people? What can I do to make this world a better place? Well, that's Superman to a T. A derisive comment people make about him is that he's a big blue Boy Scout. Well, yeah, and that's good, because we need people like him who see the good about what a country like ours can do and believe in the American dream and not in the false dream that we have created that has nothing to do with the ideal. That's who Superman is, the actualization of the American dream.
Yeah. Build wider tables, not taller walls. I think that's what Superman would do.
Well said. And yeah, I mean, it is, again, just like the human element that his enemies see as his weakness, but he knows is his strength that defines him. Because, like, a lot of say, why would you protect these people? They're so inferior to you. You could do so much more. And again, going back to his upbringing, he's raised with those values of, no, I'm going to look out for the little guy. I'm going to, stand up for what I believe in, and that's what makes him who he is. And yeah, that's what, when he's written well, that's, I think, what makes him so iconic and so still relevant after all these years. But yeah, I also go ahead, Will.
No, I was just saying that's part of the charm of My Adventure with Superman. Yeah. We got some Batman to talk about, but I think the charm of My Adventure with Superman, excuse me, is that he there's a learning curve there. He doesn't have it all together. He doesn't have it all figured out just yet. He's still learning, but those values are still there embedded with him. And you see that being played out and him wrestling with, his love of friends and family and those around him and wanting to do what's right. But he's still fumbling around. He's still trying to figure it out. And did he have a new powers set in season 2? Is that what, did he have a force field? What was that was going on? They introduced something kind of a little different that hasn't always been a part of it. I was wondering if this is something that's brand new here. I'm all for it. Let's say did he
it was more like a Superboy tactile telekinesis thing, I think. Okay. And the clone Superboy, what he could do, if I remember correctly, in the death of Superman, to differentiate him from Superman, they gave him that ability. But I think this is like a different form of that. I could be wrong.
It was like some kind of telekinesis, force field, something going on, that glowy eyes that exuded from him. That was like, man, this is a new little power set that I love. If you're going to introduce, we know he's been around so long, we know what he can do and can't do and his weaknesses. But to introduce a new power, I'm for. Let's see what we can do with this. Let's evolve. Let's evolve a little bit.
It's very cool. And I was just gonna say too, one last note here is that the voice actor playing Superman is Jack Quaid, who does a great job. But it's just really funny that he plays him here, then stars in a very different take on superheroes in another show, very popular. So playing in The Boys. It is very he's so two different very takes on superheroes, but he does a great job here, and as well as the rest of the cast. But yes, I know. Let's move on to Batman.
It's just my default sometimes to see, I think, and my eyes just start automatically rolling. Even if I agree with what he says eventually, it's just a learned reaction.
Yep. That's why we love him. That's why we're here.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so moving on to Batman Caped Crusader. I know we got a lot to talk about here, too.
Hey, it's one season. We just talked about 2 seasons of that, and Superman's been around 80 years. Of course, we're going to gush all over Superman, the character. And Batman's been around just almost as long, but this is one season. We're going to do similar stuff, but it's not as long. But hang in there, folks. Hang in there with us. I believe you.
I hope you're enjoying this one, and thank you for sticking around. But yeah, so we talked a little bit earlier our background with Batman the Animated Series. Just real quick, do you guys have any favorite episodes?
For this one or animated series?
For the animated series first.
Oh, man. We'll take it. I need to think.
I can list a few of mine, too, if you need a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Being a Star Wars Luke Skywalker fan, I mean, come on, the Joker. I mean, what are we talking about here? There he is, the Luke Skywalker himself. And I think the Joker portrayed in this is good. The origin of Harley Quinn, that's where she emerged from in this series. And then eventually in the later episodes, when you get into Robin and them hanging around with each other and kind of playing that out, I'm a big fan of Robin. I've always been a fan of Dick Grayson and other Robins, and like the sidekick of Batman is a little bit lighter edge, or a little bit more comical, or just not as broody as Batman. I've just always been a fan of Robin and Dick Grayson. So I love it when he shows up. I love when Nightwing shows up.
He's great in the show. And I mean, some of my favorites are Beware the Gray Ghost is one of the most iconic all time.
Excellent choice.
Which is an original character they did, and none other than Adam West voiced that character. Still love that episode. Still remember the first time I watched it. Almost Got Him is another one favorite, where all the villains are sitting around talking about how they almost captured Batman. And it's just that one is so good. Heart of Ice, of course, is an Emmy award-winning one that reinvented Mr. Freeze, and ever since then, other creators have looked to that as the definitive version of Mr. Freeze. There are so many good ones, but Christian, what are some of your favorites from BTAS?
Yeah, I will definitely second Almost Got Him. I mean, it's like the perfect way to show all the villains and their schemes. Now, they kind of recognize the futility of their actions. They always fail, but they keep doing it because they're mad. Imagine that. Batman villains, not exactly the straightest of minds, we'll put it that way. And I can't remember the name of the episode, but it's the one where this just the random guy gets angry at the car next to him, only to find out it's the Joker that he was about to flip off or something like that.
Oh,
so Joker makes his life a living hell until he gets the last laugh on him. But I mean, as well, if we're including the new
Yeah, it's
Batman
the
animated series.
same universe. Yeah,
Yeah. Joker's Millions as well.
yeah.
Just that
Great
there's
one.
one person out there who got the last laugh on the Joker by pitting him against the IRS makes me cackle every single time. And my final one I'll put is was The Day I Killed Batman or whatever it is. I
Yeah.
definitely butchered the title.
Yeah.
And then like seeing how the different villains deal with like Batman being dead, he's obviously not, and Batman like providing safety for the person who allegedly killed him, and the funeral scene as well. Just the kazoo. I die every time that scene plays.
The writing is just so good for a it has the banner of a children's Saturday morning cartoon, and no diss to children's Saturday morning cartoons, but this is just all these years later, it still is a show that is thematically engaging and so mature in its storytelling, and is just as enjoyable for adults and kids and everything in between. But I bring up the animated series because Batman Caped Crusader is very much a spiritual successor to the original series, and even how it came about. So I mean, the first thing you see in the opening credits is executive producer Bruce Timm, who of course was one of the chief architects of the animated series and the entire DC animated universe. And originally, Warner Brothers approached him about doing a continuation or a revival of the animated series, and he declined that offer first and said, no, I've kind of done what I wanted there. And they have done a comic continuation. I've got it on my shelf over here, but with some of the original creators write that book, but he wasn't interested in doing a strict revival. And then he came back to it and decided he didn't want to do a direct continuation, but he wanted to, like I said, do more of a spiritual successor, do something that is like geared toward fans of the animated series, but takes a slightly different reimagining, and does some of the ideas that he never got to do in the initial run in the 90s, and bring a more mature, adult oriented tone with this series. And that's how Caped Crusader came about. Also, executive producers include J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, the director of The Batman, and Ed Brubaker heads up the writing team. So it is just, as much it is a love letter to the animated series, it also does reimagine things, and puts a different spin on characters, and really captures the essence of the 1940s Batman. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the series. I know I just finished season 1 today, so I think we'll be able to dissect it more in the future when we have time to absorb it. But just what are your initial thoughts on Caped Crusader and the ways that it captures the classic, both like the 90s series and the 1940s Batman, and also reimagines other elements and characters?
Yeah, I think, when you're watching, you can't help but think of the original animated series because that's the style, that's the vibe that it's going for. But it's also set in the 1940s. It's not like Batman in the 90s with the animated series or whatever. I mean, it was throwback, but not real throwback. This is again Batman Year One, or like not just Year One, like Frank Miller style, like 1940s. Like him and Commissioner Gordon are not friends yet. There's not the bat signal. He's still like got the long pointy ears and just the gray and the black. Throwback from the original Detective Comics first appearance of Bruce Wayne and the Batman. So I love that that's the vibe that they're going for, along with some reimagining, kind of Elseworlds or What If, of some of his classic rogues gallery, because you can't beat Batman's rogues gallery. I mean, Spider-Man has good rogues gallery. There's some good villains out there for the Avengers. Superman has his, but Batman's villains rogues galleries, you just can't beat it. They're just classic. And to do a reimagining of some of that, for a little bit more representation and reimagining for a current audience, but still having it kind of this throwback retro nostalgia from the 1940s, is super cool. Noir, classic. I love the tone. I love the vibe. It's really well done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I mean, obviously compared to the animated series, it's not as good, but it's
Mhm.
just the one season, so it's an unfair. It was going to be compared either way, but right now it's extremely unfair.
Yeah.
And so I'll be rating that as divorced as I can later on. But yeah, it was super nice to see, Batman just starting off, meeting his villains for the first time, trying to save the city. Like, this Bruce Wayne, how is he different from other Bruce Waynes? Well, I wish we would have explored him a little more, but once again, in our current settlement, we only have so many episodes per season, unlike what we used to do back in the day.
Mhm.
So I will still complain about that with my dying breath. 10 was not enough. We needed more. But as far as what it was actually telling, the introductions of the villains were amazing. I'm glad they all got their own little spotlight episode. Harvey Dent gets 2 at the very end, but I could not remember. I'd never seen Onomatopoeia before. I did not know who he was. This was my introduction to him, so it was very nice to see someone.
Kevin Smith
who-
creation.
Yep.
A Kevin
Yeah.
Smith creation.
In the
Yeah.
Kevin Smith creation in his Green Arrow run, so that
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
that was a nice deal. It was I thought the two biggest like that, and then an original character create was what was it, the Gentleman's Ghost or whatever. So yeah, that,
Yeah, bringing that, he was originally a Hawkman villain, if I remember correctly.
Okay,
He was
okay,
kind
okay,
of like
okay.
shifted a little towards Batman.
Okay.
But yeah, it was great to see him too. The cop side of things, I really enjoyed Gordon's portrayal. He was, really hard to mess up Commissioner Gordon. I mean, you have to really assassinate his character for that. And then Renee Montoya, of course, being one of the only honest cops on the force, enjoyed her. I was a little miffed about Bullock being like pure bad cop, and Jim Corrigan too, who, by the way, is the first Spectre. So I was. That was a good twist. I'm just not happy about the character they chose to do it with. So there's that. I would have liked to have seen a little more nuance there, other than just Gordon and Montoya being our good cops of the series. Other than that, I mean, the reimaginings for the villains were really done well. We'll get to favorite episodes in a little bit, so I'll stop for right now.
Yeah. No, I had the same thought about Bullock too, because like what I like about him in the animated series is that he's like, he hates Batman and he wants to take him down, but he's like, he is also not a corrupt cop, though. He wants to like kind of do good, and he thinks like Batman is not the way to go about it. But here they grouped him in with Flash, and I mean, I get, they needed like that divide there, and I like the tension there in the Force, and I love Renee Montoya. I would say Harley. I mean, I'm a big Harley Quinn fan in general, and I especially liked her portrayal here because I like that there was zero connection to the Joker, and not only that, but like you see her as the therapist. I'm going to talk about the therapy in a little bit, but you see her as a therapist first, as Harley Quinzel, and then her origin here is that I really like it is that for any of the patients she has that are I not only like not making any progress, but are doing harm to others, and she sees that, she kind of puts aside her patient confidentiality and her morals there as a therapist, and takes these people captive and makes them suffer, which is like, I mean, obviously it's still bad, but it's also like, hey, that's a good villain origin. Like, I mean, and you can, I mean, it mirrors Poison Ivy in a way of like, yes, her methods aren't great, but she's also going after bad people, and like I kind of like that a lot. So I really love that, but yeah. So I think you guys said it really well as far as the parallels to the animated series, some of the things it does differently. So from season 1, do you have a favorite episode or two so far?
Yeah, I really loved one about like is Harley Quintel? Is that what they're doing?
Yes,
Quinzel.
Yeah, a little different variation on the name, but I like it that Bruce is one of her clients, and that you can, it's hard to tell a good Batman story and not eventually get to Joker. The fact that they didn't do Joker at all, like this season, and like she's separate from the Joker, I do like that. Similar to like My Adventure with Superman, it's hard to do like a full Superman without Lex Luthor, but you can tell a good Superman story without Lex, and even though he shows up in that season, it's not like the main nemesis. And I just love the episode. What is it? Episode 4, Night of the Hunters, where they finally said they have this like police force plan to take down Batman with these kind of bait and trap plans, and they don't work. He outsmarts them every single time. And the fact, and I love it when I love that origin story of Gordon not understanding Batman, but Batman kind of sees the good in him, and he's eventually comes to understand that Batman's not as bad as he thinks he is. And to see them saving kids from this burning house and looking at each other and have to work with each other and save each other, and he's slowly starting to understand maybe Batman's not as bad as who I think he is. He's not the villain like everybody else in town. There's something different about this guy. So that growing understanding between the two and their mutual kind of friendship and work together, seeing that kind of unfold in a different kind of way. We've seen it before, but to see this again, it seemed a little fresh. It seemed I just like that origin story of their friendship together. So that's the episode that stood out for me.
Yeah, great one. Christian, what about you?
I'm going to choose a second episode for mine. I think this is one of the best Clay faces we've gotten. His whole shtick there of, being this actor who just doesn't have the face to be the leading man, and being resentful of that, and, thinking, oh, well, that's why there's no women in my life or anything. No one will look at me. I can only get these bit roles. I can never be the star, and I'm going to go take this treatment, and it falls apart. And now my face shows the ugliness that was always within, because I let those resentments about the outer let the inner become just as bad as the outside. And Montoya as well, showing her chops as an officer, and a detective, that was done extremely well. It helps that this was written by Greg Rucka, I think, who did a lot of her characterization in Gotham Central.
Yes,
if I remember correctly. Yeah,
correct.
And showing her competence, and not in a way of being like, I'm a lady cop and I'm just better than the boys, but hey, does her job well, maintains her refusing the bribe from Bruce at the very beginning, just to showcase, hey, she's not like everyone else. Oh, maybe I can use her as an asset. And then starting her relationship with Batman as well, as being like, hey, I know you put this bug on me, but we can make this work. And great fight scene as well. Excellent episode.
I also really love that. I'd probably put the Harley as my favorite of the season, but the Clayface one is a close second, because I've always loved that character. Really love what they did there, and I love the classic Hollywood era and exploration. Love Renee Montoya. That one was just so well written. And then the swashbuckling, it was just the icing on the cake when Batman engages in a sword fight with Clayface at the end. That you just can't beat. But I do, from a psychological and execution standpoint, the Harley one I just really liked. And that provides a segue. I know we're going over here, but this is, again, too good an episode to rush through. But I mentioned it earlier that so the Harley episode features Bruce Wayne going to therapy, and Harley Quinzel is his therapist. So this raises a question here. Well, really a two-parter here. So, A, should Bruce have dealt with his childhood trauma in a more traditional way all along? And B, can he do good as Batman?
I'll take a point on this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one, in a different world, that's what he should have done. Hey, use that money, get your best therapist possible, work on this trauma, and then as an adult, find better means. But we're in a superhero world. Batman needs to be this. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't need to have therapy. He should definitely, have someone more than Dr. Tompkins in his life, or Alfred, who eventually along the way he does call by name. I thought that was a great bit of characterization for him, for Bruce. Though we didn't get too much for him, but he needs psychological help, because dressing up as a bat isn't always the best way to unleash the feelings within yourself. But for the city of Gotham, they need Batman. They need this incredibly messed up man who is working through and processing the murder of his parents and saying never again. Gotham needs that man to say never again, because if Commissioner Gordon is by himself saying never again and there's no one backing him up, then he's gone for. He's done for. Same thing with Harvey Dent. Well, he got alone. Batman wasn't there to help him. Acid to the face. He's gone. The city, Gotham needs Batman. Batman needs Gotham. And can he do as good as Batman? Yes, because guess what? The system is corrupt. Gordon can only do so much. He's even a patsy to an extent of the mayor. Like he put him in that position, kind of like just uplift him upstairs. He can only do so much harm. If Gordon doesn't have Batman backing up, if he doesn't have people like Barbara and Harvey Dent in the legal system actually working against evil instead of giving in to their baser instincts, then the city's going to stay corrupt. And sometimes, I hate to say it, you need that vigilante to do what needs to be done.
Great point.
Yeah, I just echo that too. Yeah, in our ideal world, yes, he needs a healthy counselor and therapist to help him work through those things, and that police force and the social system, and Alfred should have seen that from the beginning and get what he needs, as a kid. But what he's working through and him being open to those things. I hate that like the therapist and the psychologist was seen as kind of the villain. Eventually they're going to turn out, again, it's like, I hate those stereotypes of, the therapists are out to get you. You're wasting your money there, because good therapy is good. I believe in the science behind it. We need those things in our world, but hey, this is a superhero world, and that makes sense. But yeah, I think Batman can be good. He's doing it. He's learning. He learns from those around him. And at the heart, he's a detective. He's a Sherlock Holmes. If Superman is like the alien with a bunch of powers, here we have a normal human who's working through things. And yeah, he's got the resources, but he's a human. He's got no special powers other than like good hard work ethic. He's a ninja and he's got money, but he's also a detective. And I like that this cartoon tapped into the nature of like solving a crime. There's a mystery to be solved, and there was a couple of the episodes I had no idea where it was going to end. Where is this going? Who's it? I was trying to figure out what was going along with the mystery and the detectiveness of it all from the get-go. So I think it's well written and well done. And yeah, does our world need a Batman? No, I don't want a vigilante out there doing things on his own. But in this universe, yeah, I want to see him grow. I want to see him do good and work with Commissioner Gordon.
And those are great points, like putting into context of this universe. And it also speaks to the question of like, can he do good? And also like, should he eventually retire? I think it's part of the context here is the nature of comics and, legacy characters, that these are mythological beings that aren't just going to go away. They're going to keep telling these stories till the end of time. But I think if the story of Batman were a contained story with a beginning, middle, and end, I think we could see, look at the Dark Knight trilogy, which is very much standalone, and you get to see Bruce come to that arc and find happiness. I know Dark Knight Rises gets criticized enough, but I really do love the ending. I think it's a great message that, he does find a point where he realizes that Bruce Wayne does not have to be Batman forever. He can pass the mantle on. He can go and be happy and find a life. And I really like that. But again, in comics and animation and, these long-standing legacies, it's just not going to happen because like they're going to keep making these stories. And so, but I think you said it so well as far as like, yes, I would love to see Bruce get therapy too, but also yes, he can absolutely do good as Batman. And since you mentioned too, like his treatment toward Alfred is pretty brutal. And I was listening to a podcast earlier where he treats him like second class and like his employee and not his friend or his father figure, which is very different than portrayals we've seen in the past. And I think it speaks to the kind of year one aspect here where he still has a lot of growth to do. And he does at the end of the season call him by his first name. And we get the sense that, okay, maybe he is starting to look inward a bit and realize, in the same way that the Matt Reeves Batman film did this, that where he is like, more angsty, more vengeance seeking. I think he'll get to a point where he can realize what Batman can be as a symbol of hope and as a symbol of justice, not just vengeance and fear and, and him going crazy and treating others, horribly just because, he thinks he can. So I think that I like that he's flawed here and that I'm hoping that in future seasons, we'll get to see more of that development.
Matt Reeves is a part of this creation too, right?
Yep.
And, Alfred's still dead in the comics. I know it's a spoiler, but y'all, I cannot believe they let him be dead this long. It's been a while.
Hasn't it been like 2 years?
It's been a couple years.
Yeah.
It's like an eternity in comic time.
I know. Bring Alfred back. Come on. We need.
He will eventually. But yeah, no, I think those are great points though, and it makes me really excited for future seasons to see how that will play out. I also want to give a shout out to talking about in relation to the animated series. Obviously, like you can see in my name here, I mean, no one will ever be a better Batman than Kevin Conroy. He will always be our Batman. But I do want to give a shout out to, I think the entire voice cast here is great. But Hamish Linklater is a wonderful casting here. For those of you who don't know, he is the star of Midnight Mass, and I think is like one of the. I mean, he plays the priest, the villain in that. I mean, that is one of the like best performances just in general I've seen in years, and I think he brings a lot to the table here, delivering that perfect voice as Batman, and also able to capture the charm and charisma with his Bruce Wayne. So got to give a shout out to him. There's some other great talents here too. Yeah.
It definitely mirrored Kevin Conroy, but it wasn't like someone trying
to mimic him. Yeah.
And I think that's the whole animated series. That's itself. You shared an article with us, Kevin. It's like, is this too much? So was it nostalgia? Do we like it because it's nostalgia? And I think they did a good job of setting a different time in the 1940s, letting it be its own thing and reimagining some characters. But yet, yes, it's very much like the animated series. If you like the animated series, you're going to love this one. And I love how they kind of blended the two. It should have a little bit of nostalgia, a part of it to pull us in. But man, I think this is something young Batman fans out there, not just those who have been around since the 1900s, would probably like these stories and get into the superhero-ness and the detective mystery of it all. It's good. It's good.
Absolutely. Well, and I know you need to wrap up here soon, but I'm gonna be like Deadpool at the end of it. You're like, okay, all right, guys, we're almost there. What are some? Obviously, we talked about a lot of the characters that showed up in this season, but who are some others? Either Robins or villains or whoever you want to see show up in season 2 or however many they make.
Yeah, I would.
If you're on YouTube, you see my answer. No, go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
No, I was just like, season 2. Do it since it's set in the 1940s. That time piece. Do I want a Robin in season 2? I always want a good Robin. I would love a good version of Dick Grayson.
Well,
we've already seen them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that's right. You haven't gotten that episode yet, have you? Well,
Dick Grayson shows up.
Yeah.
Well,
it's pretty.
Yes,
I mean, it's pretty. It's
a little younger than what you expect.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll get there.
Including a lot of people are a little younger than you would expect.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So it's cool. I think it'll be a while before he evolves it, but he is teased here. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, but Christian, excellent choice there.
Yes.
Ra's al Ghul. Okay, yeah. I was just about to ask, do you pronounce Ra's or Roz? Because I have heard so many people argue about that. But
yeah. I'll go with how it was. Was it Batman Beyond, where Terry just mispronounces Roz and Ra's and Talia's body? Huge spoiler, by the way. Corrects him on the pronunciation. So I'm going to go with that. Yeah, because if there's someone, Joker was teased at the end of this season. Sorry, Will, but he will be back in the second season, obviously. So I'm looking forward to that. But if we want to talk about Batman's intellectual equal, someone conniving, someone who can, make life a living hell for Bruce, you've got Ra's al Ghul, and any way he wants to use his machinations. We've already established there's fantastical things in his world through Gentleman Goes, so we can have the Lazarus Pit show up as well. Maybe that's how a certain character can come back due to events that happen. I won't spoil that for you. And Ra's, the detective versus this megamaniacal villain who can rule the world if he really wanted to. I feel like he really gave an effort, could do it. So I want to see that in season 2.
I would love to see him too, a version of him in the 40s, and just there's so many things they could do there. I have 2 real quick. One, been done in the animated series, but would still love to see again in a different version. Poison Ivy would be great here. I think they, and especially with the noir stuff, would be great. One who I'm trying to think the only there's one scene in an animated movie where I've seen him appear, but I think would fit perfectly into this and is a little lesser known. Professor Pig would be, I think, perfect for this.
That was a hint that we've already seen him.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's
true. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
but I want to see
yeah.
him more. So like, do an entire episode with that. Like, I mean, a Zodiac type killer kind of thing, and there's a lot of ways you go there. So I would love to see it.
Yeah, in a more mature series, they could easily do a character like him justice, because he may be a bit much for the animated series, because that
A
was
little bit.
geared towards children. They got away with a lot back in the day with
They
Fox
did.
censors and everything.
They did.
But I think they can get away with a lot more with Amazon.
Yeah.
They did. But so those would be great. But there's plenty others. But I think that those are my picks. Awesome. Well, okay. Well, wrapping up here. So obviously we really enjoyed both of these series, but if you had to give a rating, first for My Adventures in Superman, what would it be?
Yeah, it's I give it a 9. It's a 9 for me. 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
I think we're all in agreement there. I mean, there's minor nitpicks,
It's
I
not
would say,
perfect.
but but as far as just like delightful, and I want to watch again, and I'm gonna stick it through for next season, absolutely.
There's a genuineness in My Adventures with Superman to be like, okay, I want to come back and see what else you have to say, because you clearly love the characters you're working with.
Yes.
Yep. 100%.
Absolutely. Excellent. And then for Cape Crusader, I'll go ahead and start. Like, I think I would give it an 8. So still very good. Very good. I mean, that's, like 4 out of 5. Not like you said, Crusader, not as good as the animated series, but a very strong start. Was season 1. I liked its reimagining of certain characters, and it's very much made for people who grew up on the animated series, and I'm really excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm probably 7.5 because I think some of the animation, I don't know, something it mirrors the animated series, but there's sometimes the animated seems a little flat for me. The voice acting's great. The stories are great. I love the reimagining of the thing, but I'm gonna, 10 episodes, and it's passed around. I think with all those heavy hitters, I'm still giving it a 7.5 with the hopes that they really found its legs, and they're gonna really keep it going with the season 2.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'll join Will. The 7.5 out of 10 for me. It's just like, I think there's just something a little more polish needs to be given here. I'd love to see more of Bruce at a certain point in time. Yes, I know Bruce is the mask and Batman's the actual face, blah, blah, blah. But it'd be nice to get in his head a little more, his circumstances. Yeah, I don't want to see, the Thomas and Martha Wayne die scene for the 50 billionth time again, but explore that a little bit and everything. So there's that, and the villains are fine. I have come around on the Harley Quinn. I wasn't big on it at first, because like the whole thing about the mad love is like what really makes her, and I really don't like what they've done with Harley Quinn in recent years, because they just keep over saturating comics and media with her instead of and trying to make her a hero at certain points in time too, as I understand. And that's not Harley. But this one is her own thing. I think, apart from the Joker, really enjoyed that. So yeah, I think we got a solid start. 7.5.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, guys, this has been a blast, and I think so. For listeners out there, viewers, go watch both of these. We would love to chat about these in the larger DC animated universe and anything DC with you all anytime. So please leave a 5-star review, like us on YouTube, and another reminder: if we get 50 likes on a video, we will record Will running around in a field of flowers, frolicking through the flowers. Tell me you don't want to see that. All you have to do is like the video, tell your friends to like it. It's only 50 likes. It's not too many.
You don't even have to watch the whole video. You just like
it.
You
just like it. That's all.
Smash the like button and then go away.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Ruin our analytics.
Ruin our analytics, but we can still get to that video of Will frolicking through flowers. So I also want to give a shout out to some Patreons here: Russell Gentry, Justin Vaughn, Annette Noel, Jeannie Mattingly. I apologize if I pronounced any of those wrong, but y'all are awesome. Thank you so much. And to all of our Patreons, all our supporters, anyone who supports the show, we love you all. And remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
If you'd like to support our show, please consider joining our Patreon, where you get live access to our YouTube exclusives, including our comic book catch-up, manga mustard, drinks with Tejas, and our companion series that we do each year with our annual theme. You can also get exclusive merch, including t-shirts, handbags, a coffee mug, and a long sleeve shirt. We also have available bonus extra questions at the end of most of our podcast episodes. You get access to exclusive Discord channels, discounts on our store, access to any future online D&D campaigns. You get to vote on topics for some of our episodes. You can easily access all of the Patreon content right through Spotify now. So super easy. Go to our Spotify page at the top. It's going to say exclusive content for subscribers. If you're a patron, hit that button. You get all of our bonus content right there on Spotify, right with your regular feed. And of course, you get the satisfaction of knowing you helped a podcast in need. Our overhead includes editing software, marketing equipment, recording software, and a lot more. And there's a lot that goes into keeping the lights on here. And we really appreciate all of our patron subscribers for helping this show happen.
Hi, my name is TJ, and I'm here to tell you about the Anazao Ministry Podcast Network. We have a bunch of shows on AMP. You can follow the entire network in a single feed on Spotify at Anazao Ministry Podcasts or on the network page on Apple Podcasts. Some of the ones we're running right now are the Homily, which is Pastor Will's homily messages from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Chapel Hill. We have the Whole Church podcast, which one of my favorites. It's where myself and Joshua, we interview leaders from different denominations and backgrounds to work for a full church unity, Big C. We have My Seminary Life by Brandon Knight, former host on Systematic Geekology. He discusses his experience at seminary and discusses seminary topics so anyone can access the knowledge. Which is kind of cool. It's like the book, everything you learn in business school and then everything you don't learn at business school. It's great. We have Let Nothing Move You by Christian Ashley. He goes through the Bible kind of like it's a Bible study to explain the biblical narrative through his perspective and what he's learned. Dummy for Theology, which is Joshua's show. He discusses various theological topics in an attempt to show every side of big discussions. That leaves you with more questions than answers, which everyone loves a lot. It's kind of a continuation of a series that we did on Whole Church, but it's really good. It's really fun. We have the Bible After Hours, where the foul-mouthed preacher goes through the Bible from a progressive view to challenge the status quo of the modern church. I love that one. If you're from a more conservative background, that one I find will probably be the most helpful for you. Definitely check that out. And we have the Clydes. Taylor and Elizabeth Clyde go through weekly discussions in a devotional, conversational method to help us get closer to one another and God. That's just a little review of what we do in AMP and all of our other shows. So check that out, get subscribed, and just start getting all that free content, you know?